Hey, Brian. We're gathering.
Yeah.
Mr. Felton. And did it stop snowing yet?
Pardon?
It's,
Has it stopped? I
uh,
don't think so.
uh, doesn't know when to quit.
Right.
Impressed.
Brandon, is that you? That's where it says Town of St. George.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. And it said Wendy's phone, but then that has disappeared. So
She's
we
still on
will.
here.
Oh, she is. Okay.
Yep.
All right, then. Well, we have 1 minute. Do you know if anybody requested to attend by Zoom from the public?
I assume just the folks that are already in.
Okay. Was Katie going to be here?
I had thought so, but let me check in with Katie.
All
I know
right.
she was originally attending to or planning on attending, so
Okay.
Is Aaron taking notes?
Yeah, I don't know.
Just wondered.
I know I sent her the link.
I'm here.
Oh, all
I'm
right.
here.
We just don't. There you are.
Speaking of Aaron,
We can start with other things, Brandon, while we're waiting for Katie. Is that all right? All right. So we'll skip the Pledge of Allegiance since we won't be all in one place. I do have a flag in my kitchen, but anyway. Um, are there any adjustments to the agenda? No. All right. Any conflicts of interest regarding matters on our agenda for tonight? No. All right. Minutes of the last meeting. Did people have a chance to review the minutes that Aaron sent us? Were there any changes to that?
No,
Yes?
no.
No. Okay. All right, then. Does somebody want to make a motion that we approve those?
we approve.
Steve made a motion.
Second,
Tammy seconded. And when we meet by Zoom, we have to do roll call votes. So Jane votes yes to approve the minutes.
yes.
Yes. Well, this is Wendy. Yes.
Okay, and Brian's got his hand up. Okay. Um, so communications received by the town manager or any of the rest of us that we need to share. We have been receiving some communications regarding the idea of having a small parking lot park combination where the buoy is at Main Street and Juniper Street. And I think we've shared the ones we've received in writing, or we will continue to do that. I don't think I've had any other communications. Have you, Brandon?
have did I share my communications at the last meeting with David Miller and a couple of developers from Connecticut? There's
No, no, you did not. You told me, but I don't think the group has heard that yet.
um, so essentially there's folks both a group of developers from Connecticut that are looking at buying a house on Main Street in Tennant's Harbor. It's the former bed and breakfast. And so it's like an 8 bedroom, 6 bathroom house currently. And they're looking to put in multiple units. And essentially they'll be pretty limited in what they can do based on both the combination of our ordinances and then the septic requirements that are set by the state. Um, and then David Miller, he's a resident in town. He's looking to put two duplexes on a lot that he has that would create four year-round apartments. Uh, and he's unable to do it because it would, without triggering the subdivision ordinance. However, if you were to divide the lot into two, he would be able to build the exact same project. But he would pay more in taxes because now he would have two base lots that he's paying taxes on. And so I wanted it on, I told him that I would bring it to this group to just, I wasn't sort of aware that, you could build the exact same units if you're willing to just pay more in taxes. It seems like um, a little silly of a system given we've identified housing as one of the biggest needs in St. George. And so it's not all that conducive. I know that there are certain towns that are uh, giving tax breaks to residents that are putting in housing. And, I think he'd be willing to divide the lots if it didn't result in a heavier tax burden. And so we need to review both the land use and the subdivision ordinance anyway, because there are changes that are being mandated by the state that are due in the spring of September. Well, they are due in 2027. And so for us, that would be May if we want to get it on our town meeting. And so I just wanted to put it on this group's sort of radar that we have folks that are looking to build year-round workforce apartments in town, and currently are, being a little restricted by our ordinances. This group from Connecticut, if they have to go to 2 or 3 units, these are going to be much higher end units in order for them to recoup their costs, which may box out, a lot of the workforce that they're targeting. And so I just, again, told both groups that I would share that with the select board. I think it's helpful for y'all to know that there's, essentially people willing, ready to put 12 apartments in town and are unable to do it. And that was the only communication I had.
This is
Yeah,
Wendy. I
so-
mean, the thing that worries me about that is the septic idea, because if it's the property I'm thinking about, there's not a whole lot of area for a new septic field, like a big field that will handle all of those apartments. So I think it's one thing to comply with the state regs, but it's another thing to create health and safety issues if there's not enough land to handle the septic waste. So I want to have that always on our radar, thinking about ordinance changes.
Right. So there are two, and this is actually also listed in the discussion and action items, but we may as well talk about it now, especially since Mike is here and the CDC is really invested in creating housing, particularly more affordable housing. We've known since we updated the land use ordinance 2.5 years ago that we needed to update the subdivision ordinance. So that is something Michael Jordan and the planning board knew that we would need to tackle. And so that I think we just need to put on our schedule so that that will happen along with other land use ordinance changes required because of new state laws impacting housing. But the septic issue, which has been an issue for a lot of properties on Main Street, including, the Tenants Harbor General Store property. There were people that were interested in buying that, but only if they could help offset their expenses by having an apartment upstairs, but the septic capacity wouldn't allow that. So one thing that Sarah Oaktai and I and others have talked about is holding tanks that need to be pumped on a regular basis. And the state's regulations about having holding tanks currently are very strict and in general require you to have a certain type of certified person working as your licensed plumbing inspector, code enforcement officer. And so, and obviously, if we had the capacity of having holding tanks that got pumped regularly, then you could protect the water quality um, in the shoreland zone. But because the state requires a certain monitoring to ensure that people are pumping them when they're supposed to. And so I would like to see us work with the Maine Municipal Association or other organizations that are interested in promoting housing where there are small lots, because most of the housing laws that have passed are great, but they're only going to work in communities where they have a sewer system and they don't benefit a town like ours where everybody has a septic system. So if we want to have some development on smaller lots, communities like ours need to be looking to the legislature to make it easier to have these holding tanks. And I have to believe that in the technological world we live in now, where you can even have an alert that tells you your tank is 80% full and you need to have it emptied, that we could get people on a schedule and whoever at the town is monitoring this knows that, Joe Smith on Main Street's tank needs to be emptied in June. And then we monitor that and make sure that we do that. And so that's sort of a legislative advocacy suggestion that I wanted to bring to the group to at least have conversations about that with people at the state and other municipalities to see if they were interested in trying to advance housing options by making a change about that. So I am interested in what other people think about that.
Well, I'm okay if we have conversations. I guess I'm still worried that as soon as human beings are involved and we don't really have anybody from the town to monitor this, I always fear that there's going to be an overflow. And, because somebody doesn't get their tank pumped. So I don't know. I mean, I certainly think we can have conversations about it, but it doesn't thrill me to circumvent it doesn't thrill me to circumvent septic regulations because they were put in place for a reason. So
Right,
anyway,
the problem we have with that is, where I used to live when we sold our house, the septic system failed and we had to deduct 35,000 from that price so that the new owner who was not getting a mortgage, they were paying cash, could, replace the septic system. But there is no one in our town office who's making sure that that happened. And there's no one, we're not monitoring now whether people's leach fields or septic systems are failing. So, you're right that the importance is enforcement to make sure, that there isn't waste in places where we don't want it. But I actually think it would be easier to ensure that there were not going to be overflows with these tanks than having somebody going around all over town checking septic systems. But anyway, if people feel okay with the idea of talking to people and seeing, I mean, obviously, if this were a legislative change, this is not something that's going to happen anytime soon, even if we all think it's a brilliant idea. What do other people think? Tammy?
Well, I know Cod End used to have a holding tank and they used to have it pumped every 1 or 2 weeks, you'd see the truck down there. And I guess it would be an okay idea as long as people do it. And they obviously would have to absorb the cost, but are they able to afford it? I mean, that's a pretty costly thing to do to have a pump tank a tank pumped every couple of weeks.
And
So
and
just,
how do you do that for multiple units? I mean,
Right.
who's in charge of that? I mean, I'm just
mean,
asking who would be in charge of that if you have multiple units, either rentals or they're sold as condos, then who's in charge of keeping the tank? Because there would be one large commercial tank.
right.
That
Right. You're right. That is something that would have to be clear whether it was going to be the landlord or the property owner that was going to make sure it was done and coordinate with the town and file the paperwork that it had in fact been done.
hmm.
We're not the
And I know,
first town to pursue this though. Like we don't have to figure out all these answers. There are towns that have gone through this and have holding tanks as a regular system. And so, there's likely a lot to be learned.
yes, Tammy, you're right that, and I attended the planning board where um, the women that want to start the coffee shop at the former Cod End,
Right.
they had to talk to Interstate and submit information. And when Luke's Lobster was given a permit to operate there, they too had rules about how often they had to pump that
Right.
tank. So obviously, that is something that system must have been grandfathered in or something if that's the only one we're all aware of where that's already happening or has happened.
I'm old enough to remember when that the poop was straight piped into the harbor. So I'm glad we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, let's just do
Right.
that.
That was way back, but you could walk along the
Right.
shore and didn't want to look. But I
Right.
did ask Brandon. I assume you said a former B&B. Is that the one on Church Hill, that big building? And yeah. And
Yes.
where's the other lots?
They're up on 131 over by David Miller's house. So just north of Echo Hill.
Okay, so a little bit out of the village.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that's not even a matter of septic capacity. That is, he has the lot size to put in a septic that can serve 4 units. It's just that he would pay more in taxes if he wanted to avoid triggering the subdivision ordinance, which then comes with its own sort of expenses like sprinklers or fire ponds, which,
Mhm.
Is quite the lift for, 4 units essentially.
Yeah, if you're doing a great big
Even
deal, it makes sense.
even 4 units are a subdivision on one lot, is that's what you're saying, right?
Correct.
Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add to this?
Can't
You
hear you,
must be
Brian.
muted. You're always quiet, but you're not this quiet. Maybe just get closer to it.
Do you have headphones plugged in? No, it doesn't look like it. So
Now we can hear you.
All right, well, you could type something in the chat if at any point you want to say something, because we're not going to exclude you because of sound difficulties. All right, so we will, Brandon and I, and maybe Aaron, depending on capacity, will look at what some other towns have done about the holding tank thing and figure out what we might consider in the future. And um, Mike and people at the CDC who have a vested interest might want to be part of that or connected to that. And they've obviously got lots of resources that relate to housing.
I don't think
Uh,
I just want to clarify. I don't think that my point was entirely restricted to holding tanks. Um, there are other communities in the mid-coast like Bath, Brunswick, Rockland that are, part of a ADU boost like pilot program where folks receive $10,000 to build ADUs. And so, that is something that might help offset, the increased tax burden in David Miller's instance. And so I think my ask of the select board is that, the town leadership take the same sort of proactive approach to the housing challenge that it has to the, open space and conservation mission. Those both came out strongly out of our comprehensive plan. And, open space plan has a committee that is like up and running and ready to go. And knowing that the two efforts are almost in competition with one another, right? More conserved land makes housing less available. So I just want to make sure that if we did all of that work to hear from hundreds of residents in town, that we are sort of honoring the responses, and that, housing is as important as conservation.
I think the comprehensive plan survey did make it clear that housing was one of the top two issues people are worried about here, the cost of housing. And the CDC already has a housing committee, and Steve is our sort of liaison to an existing committee that talks about housing issues. But it's true that that we've been more passive. The town attends, and we're there for the purpose of hearing from them if there are ordinance changes or municipal policies that would facilitate housing. But we definitely can be clearer about our willingness to consider policies that come from that group, or I don't know. I guess Steve, as the person who's the liaison to that group,
I think Mike
you
has
can
his hand up.
Yeah,
go
I'm
ahead.
just gonna say I know Michael Jordan is working on updating the town regs to line up with the new state statutes around housing and density. So it'll probably be a good time if you're looking at a big picture, what ordinances you want to address, you probably maybe be able to do it all in one shot.
Yes, but I think that Brandon's point of there being other ways of having housing friendly policies, like some kind of boost thing, or obviously it would be complicated to exempt people from taxes, but if there is this situation that Mr. Miller has, that the same exact thing could be built if he divided one lot into two lots. I mean, we could look at whether we could make an exemption in order to allow that. I don't know the plan. If Wendy, I'm thinking about the jurisdiction of the select board and the planning board. I don't think we don't get to, supersede their authority.
No, but the planning board could, under certain circumstances.
So I think that it's helpful that you raise these sorts of alternatives, Brandon. And I think that if he's serious, it's probably worth having him go to the planning board and having them figure out what they might do, or if there's something that could be done that advances this cause. All right, we didn't do the warrant, and then we'll get to Katie and Mike. I know Irene is not with us, and Tammy emailed Irene the only question that I had also, and maybe you know the answer, Brandon. On the last page, there's disbursements to Verathon Inc. from the general fund and relating to Steve King. So the question was, what's that?
I have no idea. I will look into that tomorrow and get back to
All
you.
right.
If it's Stephen
Did,
King, the author, he doesn't need any money.
that's right. Um, did anybody else have a question?
No.
All right, then, would we agree that, assuming that we can get a satisfactory answer to that expenditure, that we're in agreement to disperse $189,240.55 pursuant to this warrant?
Yes. This is Wendy. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, from Steve, yes, from Jane. Tammy?
Oh, before I say yes, I just had the question about why there was employee health insurance in with the unclassified and it was all Maine Coast Petroleum, and then we just have this one health insurance payment.
The unclassified health insurance expense is when employees have spouses on their health insurance. So it's for folks that are not in an actual department.
So it just goes into the unclassified and it just happens to be with all the
Yeah, and then all of our
petroleum.
other unclassifieds were Maine Coast Petroleum filling up the fuel pumps at the transfer station.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So Aaron, I don't know if you saw that Brian said yes for the warrant too. So, all right then, I guess we will need to go in and sign that for Irene this week if people can stop in and do that, since normally we do it when we're there in person. Since there are no members of the public here, well, I guess I'll just say, are there any public comments? Okay, hearing none, we would like to now hear from Katie Jacob and Mike Felton so that we can get an update on the telehealth hub program that they're doing jointly.
Katie, you want to go first and talk about you all have done a ton of work on the community paramedicine. I just want to let y'all know Shasta Minnery's here as well. She's part of the CDC Foundation Overdose Response Strategy, and she's been working with us on the telehealth program, and she'll have something to share tonight as well.
From a community paramedic perspective, we're kind of just successfully moving on the way we have. Earlier this year, we had some hurdles where the state changed the requirements for providers and the service to be licensed to provide community paramedicine. So the big shift for us was instead of anyone on staff doing community paramedic visits, specific providers had to be licensed to do that. And there were some challenges getting some classes going to make that possible. And so the state made some changes to that requirement briefly to do some conditional licensing. So we have two of us who are actively doing community paramedicine that are conditionally licensed, two more that aren't quite active in the program, and then two more, Hannah and I, who are doing a class right now for full licensure. So we kind of work through those requirements, and then otherwise we're kind of just going on the way we have with community paramedicine. We were able to do 60 visits in 2025, and we have a very full caseload right now. And so working with telehealth, our role has really just been another avenue that we can get access to patients or patients can access us, and then helping Mike just navigate some of the challenges to get telehealth stood up. But otherwise, it doesn't really change operationally, just another way for us to get to patients. So, yeah.
Katie, you updated your website too, right? With all new information and the referral form and everything.
Yeah, all of that's now on board, and that's kind of more cleared up how to get to us. And we have gotten that referral form and that information out to a lot of other doctor's offices. Benji and I kind of did a kind of press tour and visited a lot of different staff groups in Maine Health, the pediatric department and family medicine department, make sure they're all up to date with what we're doing. So we've had a huge influx of patients since then. So that's been big. And then just, all the people that we're working with to get telehealth going on, they have also sent over a lot of patients to us. So it's been great.
So for the people who read the minutes of our meetings and learn more about you, um, it's important for people to know that they need a referral from their doctor to get your services, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So starts with a
And
referral.
the doctor gives an order for like, please go to Jane's house and take her vital signs, right?
Yeah,
That's how it
absolutely.
works.
And all of those visits are, have to have a clinical requirement for us to go and have very clear I time frame around how often we're seeing them and what for and those kinds of things. But getting that referral off the ground, we can also just start with an inquiry to us where we can help get in contact with doctors and whoever needs to be involved to get that referral in too.
Are you putting something in? You've had things in the newsletter.
Yeah, last month or the month before, both the town newsletter and the CDC newsletter.
And the town newsletter too, right? It was
Yeah.
Elaine Kennedy did something from the Emergency Services Committee that
Yeah,
was,
Elaine helped us draft a few different newsletter options, and so we'll get those in every few months or so about community paramedicine, make sure everyone's up to date with what we're doing.
great. Well, it's a wonderful program. Um, and I also think it's important for people to realize that your service is not reimbursed. Like if you went to your doctor for wound care and they did it, Medicare or your health insurance would pay that doctor's office for the work, but the town is not receiving any payment from anyone for the work our community paramedicine program is providing. And this is something that our taxpayers are absorbing because we care about making sure that people have this healthcare in the community. So thank you. And we are always working on trying to get reimbursement for you guys, but it hasn't happened.
There is a
Yeah.
bill that would change that.
Yes, there is a bill that might change that. Well, at least for some reimbursement. There's Maine Care, Medicare, it's a lift, but hopefully eventually it will happen because it's so logical. If they are willing to pay some people for the service, why wouldn't they be able to willing to pay all providers who provide it? So thank you for that. Mike?
Yeah, just related to that, we've been having conversations. There's grants, big money coming to states, in part because some of the reductions that were made at the federal level for healthcare and rural health. States got grants to help fund, especially rural healthcare, and we've been talking about applying for some of those funds or working with other organizations, partnering with organizations to access those to help support the community paramedicine and the telehealth program to lift that cost off the town if possible. We just submitted a grant today for the telehealth and paramedicine program. And if that moves forward, hopefully that would help cover some community paramedicine staff time as well as some STG, CDC staff time. We'll keep chasing that money to hopefully fund this, because I know you all done a great job over the years bringing in grants to fund community paramedicine, and we certainly want to assist with that. So for the telehealth piece of it, this really grew out of the CTE Makerspace project. We got a $680,000 grant from the Maine Connectivity Authority to provide online adult education, workforce training, and telehealth through what is now the Grace Institute. And our vision for telehealth was to partner with the community paramedicine program to create an integrated telehealth community paramedicine program, and to allow people to access that through an online portal or by calling the St. George Community Development Corporation to be able to reserve a space and also telehealth equipment for an appointment. And St. George CDC staff member or volunteer would meet the person, help set up the equipment, and log into their appointment if there's not a community paramedic there. And with doctor's referral, if this could line up, then the community paramedic could also attend perhaps the telehealth appointment and also provide follow-up care. So there's a variety of pieces that have to work together. It has to go through the medical provider. But Katie and Benji have already done a great job talking to Maine Health and Penn Bay to make those providers aware of it. we've met with the telehealth provider director at Penn Bay, and we've been working closely with Benji and Betsy Lawrence, both doctors at Penn Bay, to try to tie them in so they understand this is a resource for St. George residents. And the goal of this is to make healthcare as local and accessible for all community members. So, I was at our caregiver support group that works right now mainly with older residents who have a spouse or had a spouse who often is dealing with health problems or dementia. I talked about this program. One of the women got really excited because she talked about trying to bring her spouse up to Penn Bay. He's got oxygen tanks. He was tripping over the tubes. How much easier would it be if she could do this in her house or right here in St. George? And I believe she's already reached out to Katie about the community paramedicine, and we would definitely want to support her with the telehealth as well. We think of people without transportation or access to transportation. Think about the single mom with 3 kids. You got one little kid with a fever. A lot easier to talk to the doctor over the computer from your house or in St. George than bringing all 3 kids up to Rockland. So that's sort of what's driving this. As I said, we've got a group of people, Katie, Benji, Hannah, Shasta, Britta McCullum, our new programs director at the St. George CDC. We've been working all fall and winter to try to figure this out, all the different aspects, and keep it as simple as possible while still meeting the needs of the community. So right now we've purchased all the equipment. We've got an early version of the website or the webpage for reserving telehealth and scheduling appointments on our St. George CDC website. Very rough, still needs work, but we're trying to get this going. So we're hoping to launch that, very soon, hopefully this month. Katie's done a great job getting the word out about the community paramedicine program. As I said, we're working on a variety of grants to help fund both this and the community paramedicine program. We did a community health event last week at the Grace Innovation Center. We had the Knox Clinic. We had Neighbor to Neighbor was there. Rockland District Nurses, Camden District Nurses, obviously the Community Development Corporation. Shasta was there, did a presentation for the CDC Foundation. And we had a variety of other organizations. And I think one of the pieces that's grown out of these conversations that I think could be really impactful for our community is the ability to deliver substance use treatment via telehealth right in people's homes, to break down those barriers and to meet those needs. And this is a field Shasta works in a variety of ways as a social worker and in her job with the CDC Foundation. So she's help us really think about this work and bring in different partners. So I wanted to give Shasta a few minutes to sort of talk about, what she's doing and what that work might look like.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so I'm a licensed clinical social worker under the state of Maine, and I've worked for Maine Health at Penn Bay Medical Center and on the crisis team in the ER, and also inpatient on their psychiatric and addiction unit. So I have quite a bit of experience helping individuals with addiction. So when Mike started talking about the telehealth program, started talking to him about the substance use component, and I also do telehealth therapy. So anyway, what we came up with, and it's still kind of in the works, but just basically relying on partnerships with existing organizations that are already serving Maine communities. And one of the partners that I started working with is Better Life Partners. They're a virtual and telehealth program. They offer treatment for substance use disorders, including medication, counseling, care coordination. And Lonnie, if anybody was at the presentation last week, he came down. His wife is the founder of Journey Magazine. So she came down also, and they're both very passionate about helping people in the substance use community. So he's willing to work with us with his program, which is based all over New England and actually North Carolina also. And then if any of you are familiar with the Options program, that is a state program that basically they connect individuals and families to local substance use treatment, harm reduction, recovery supports through county-based liaisons. Knox County is fortunate to have actually two people that are from St. George, Joanna Montgomery and Rebecca Johnson, I believe. So they're employed by Sweetser, and they came last week too, but they are more than willing to help with this initiative. Also I have access to the Mid-Coast Therapy Group, which is Maine licensed clinical therapists, social workers, and also licensed counselors. A lot of them provide telehealth services and are credentialed with various insurance policies, including Maine Care. So that's another group we could bring into this. And then the Maine CDC is really excited about this program and opportunity, and they're more than willing to help with really anything we need. So we brought two of them down the other night, and they work in substance use, tobacco, alcohol, cannabis, prescription misuse. They do trainings, printed resources, and just various things. So that's Jessica Schirmer and Ellen Blake. And then aside from doing telehealth therapy, I work for, as Mike mentioned, the CDC Foundation on their National Overdose Response Strategy team. So it's basically, it's a national collaboration that helps communities strengthen overdose prevention, treatment, and response efforts. I've been with the program for almost 2 years, and this is the first time I really started to bring it into our community. So I'm excited just to see where that can go. So I think those are all the organizations we're working with. This will not cost the community anything extra. These organizations are already in place and they want to help communities. So I think that's about it.
And I should tell everybody that I went to the program that was at the Grace Innovation Center last week at which Shasta presented, and it was very impressive. So we all need to make sure that people in our community are aware that people at the CDC in St. George can plug them into any of these resources. And, on the news, we often see how stretched the organizations are and how hard it is for people to access substance abuse resources. But I was very encouraged to hear that they can make sure that somebody is connected to services within hours. So that it was a wonderful presentation, and I'm so glad that you're all doing that. And Mike, on the telehealth piece, I just want to, you talked about borrowing equipment to do it, and I have an elderly friend who asked me to come to her house when she was going to have a telehealth appointment with an orthopedic surgeon from Scarborough. And, of course, this is somebody who's pretty tech savvy. She has an iPad, she has an Apple Watch, and I got to her house. But she was thinking the way this appointment was going to happen was that they were going to send her an email or call her. And if I had not been there and said, no, you got to log into my chart and click on the link. And then once we did that, it was fine. But I mean, so, it really is important to facilitate this for people, because obviously for somebody in our town to not have to go to Scarborough for this follow-up with the surgeon was a big deal. But she would have missed that appointment just because she didn't even realize that little threshold issue,
Yeah, I
logging
mean,
on.
that's a really good point, Jim. We've met with people from Maine Health and regional telehealth providers, and they all said the same thing, that providing that technical assistance to get people just logged on is huge. So that's something that we want to be able to do through the telehealth program, through our staff and through volunteers. And I think on Thursday, what we were really trying to do is sort of show all of these different services. So there was, at Knox Clinic, you can get primary care, you can get dental care, mental health services. The Community Development Corporation can provide, we do dental clinics. We can help people navigate resources to get connected to the providers that they need. Shasta and other groups talked about substance use treatment. There's, a variety of resources. What we're really trying to do is integrate and network these together so people can access what they need and do it right here in St. George. I mean, one of the main impact areas or focuses for the St. George CDC is health and well-being. So we're really trying to lean into it this year. And we think with the telehealth and the paramedicine program, working with Katie and her staff, that we can really have an impact. And, people from other towns and regions are very interested in the work that we're doing. And I think if we can integrate the substance use treatment into all of this, we'll really be able to meet a lot of needs across ages, from, pediatric care to helping people age in place and everything in between.
One of my friends sent me the link to the Midcoast Villager article about Thomaston starting a care navigation program. And she said, we need this in our town. And I said, the CDC does that. We already have that in our town. So again, it's sort of getting the word out to people of things that are, we have the capacity to do here. And I think it's wonderful that you're, especially given that our median age is 63.7 in St. George. There are a lot of us who need healthcare. And so it's great that we have the community paramedicine program and the CDC working together on this stuff.
Yeah, Shasta's son Drew came to the community health event. He was probably the youngest person there by about 20 years. So we appreciate he pushed the median down a lot.
I was just going to say 63. That's young.
I do want to give a shout out to Neighbor. They will drive up. So the Camden Area District Nurses Association, they have a bunch of medical equipment, crutches, wheelchairs, you name it. And if somebody needs something, Britta has helped work with Neighbor to either have them drive up there and get the equipment, or Neighbor will drive up for them and pick it up. So just, another resource that people have in this community to help get them what they need. And it's free. So if you can get that equipment through the Camden Area District Nurses for free.
I just like to comment that I think I'm hearing that there's sort of Shasta, you can correct me if I'm wrong, sort of a holistic approach where it's not just your physical condition, but it's mental health. And of course, substance abuse is a mental health issue as well. So it's just good to hear that that's part of the mix.
Yeah.
Well, and dental, which is such a huge need for so many of us do not have dental insurance, and it's very expensive. And so, right, we're fortunate to live here and have people
you're probably
helping.
A mortgage to get dental work.
Well, thank you, Mike and Shasta and Katie, for being here. And if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay. If you want to log off, you're welcome to log off. But thank you. We've been eager to hear from you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
So the next thing on our agenda is Krista Elwell has reached out to Susie Ellis saying she was interested in serving on the budget committee, and she's already attended two of the three budget workshops. She's very impressive. She works for the state of Maine Health Department and manages budgets for different programs there and has already provided a lot of useful comments. So on behalf of the budget committee, I would like to nominate Krista Elwell to serve as an alternate on the budget committee.
No, Krista, I'll second that.
All in favor, say your name. Jane says yes.
Wendy says yes.
Brian's got his hand up and Tammy said yes. All right, so that's all of us. Thank you. We already talked about the ordinance and regulation issues that were raised by people who want to build some housing here. We have continued to solicit input from the public about having the possible parking lot park combo at Main Street and Juniper Street. And I did receive an email from Ryan Lashane saying that the St. George Business Alliance will be sending us a letter in support of that idea. I don't know, with the snow day, I don't know if it came today or if we've seen that, but that will be shared with all of you. And I also I don't know, Brandon, I missed the deadline for the February newsletter by a few hours, but if it's possible, we could reach out to the whole community in the town newsletter asking for input.
I will check in with Bill on that tomorrow and let you know where the newsletter currently stands.
Okay.
Has anyone talked to the Bowie Tree ladies, the women that, designed it and put forth that idea about making that a parking lot?
Well, that thing would still be there.
I
The-
understand, but it would,
Okay.
in my view, it would change the nature of that particular parcel.
It definitely would be different. I think
I mean, did we enter in
obviously,
an agreement where the Bowie tree was going to dictate the use of town-owned property? That seems
No,
foolish if we did.
no, but there's some karma attached in my mind to saying one thing one year and doing another thing another year. So
well, what I was at the select board, it was before you and I were elected to serve on the select board, but I was at the meeting where they came and asked for permission to put it there, and the select board allowed them to do that. And
no, I was there too, and they worked really hard, and they had a model, and I anchored in cement, and yes, I mean, I would like to hear their thoughts about adding parking to that particular area.
I think Reagan
yes,
was the lead person on that. She's the one that came to the select board.
Who was that?
Reagan Myers. She's my neighbor here.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Yes. Well, and I think, we really do need to hear from neighbors. I was thinking I should send an email to Scott at the Historical Society across the street. Um, I think, well, and of course, Tammy's on the board at the Historical Society. It's sort of important to get information from the neighbors and the entire community about how they would feel if the part of that parcel that's closest to Main Street remained a park with the buoy, with picnic tables and landscaping. And then the part behind that, between that and the shed, had, I don't know, maybe a dozen parking spots or something yet to be determined. But we do need to get community input from all kinds of folks before any decision is made.
just wanted to say I love the buoy house or tree, whatever you want to call it. I think it's very popular with people and with visitors, and certainly represents our fishing folk here. I think I've even thought, maybe there's another location in town where it would work, and then there would be more parking there. So I'm kind of with you, Brandon, that it shouldn't determine what we do with a lot, but I also really like it and think we should accommodate it somehow. It's like a piece of art. It's really cool. And another thing I just wanted to say was, if we put a parking lot in there, and I could see that being good for the town, it would be really nice to keep the beautiful big trees that are along the sidewalk and leave them there, and have some landscaping, because parking lots can look so much better with just a little green around them, some shrubs, some big trees. It would sort of keep the character of the street there without saying, here's a used car lot here. That's the thought.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the trees along Main Street should remain where they are. Now, driving by there, I did see there is at least one tree kind of in the middle of the area that probably would be where the parking lot. There might be a couple of trees that would have to go, but the ones along Main Street wouldn't need to go anywhere. All right, so we'll continue to get input about that. I wanted to share that Brandon and Aaron and Van Thompson and I talked to Nick Jacobs at Colby. He is the professor who is the academic advisor to, our intern Willow, who worked with the Comprehensive Plan Committee last semester and this semester she's working with resilience and open space, and he supervised our students from last year. He's also on the hiring committee for Colby's new program that they're starting in Port Clyde. So he's been a contact with Colby, and I just wanted to check in with him about where they were, since I know people in town are interested in what's the status. And he shared that they have 3 finalists whom they're interviewing. And so it won't be very long until they have selected a director, with the expectation that that person would start within a few months. And it's clear that they still are in the process of developing the priorities of that program. But I was encouraged because it was clear he said that the hiring committee was very committed to having that person engage with the town of St. George, like, the planning board, or come to committee meetings, things that would make sure that that person knew what matters to all the residents of St. George, uh, not just Port Clyde. So I expect it won't be too long till we're hearing more from them. And I wanted to make sure that you all have on your calendars for Thursday at 5 o'clock. Every January we have a fisherman's panel discussion. And so this is the third of those. And this year's theme is all about the next generation, multi-generations of fishing families. So there'll be multiple Millers and Cushmans and people from different generations who've fished in St. George talking about the future. So it'll be fun. And Mike was very involved in identifying the younger contingent that will participate in that on Thursday at 5. And there'll be pizza and soda or whatever. And there's also the Valentine's dance at the Odd Fellows Hall on Friday, February 13th from 5 to 9. It's $10 a person. And there's a link on the Parks and Rec page of our website. Is that right, Brandon? To buy a ticket? Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
I already bought my ticket. And I also shared with all of you the email that I sent to a number of people, and Summer Ward for the Parks and Rec Committee and Brian are aware too, that we're basically letting lots of people know now that we are raising money to renovate the Snows Point Lodge. And if they don't want to go to the dance, but they want to give some money, that link to donate is on the town's website. So hopefully.
And we did receive one generous donation because of that already. So I was grateful that folks were willing to support it if they can't attend.
How generous was it? I don't need to know who. I was just curious.
$1,000. So the project's not done, but that.
That's
yeah, but that that's great.
Yeah,
good donation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I think if we all get the word out, and then maybe in the spring, the Parks and Rec committee could have some kind of open house there so people can go look at it and see what the potential is. And then we probably will ask, a small group of people that might be interested in some bigger checks as well. But those are all really good things. And in fact, I saw on the warrant, Brandon, that you paid Evan Myers for some of the work he's done there. So we know work is happening. That's great. Your report.
I don't have my notebook with me, which is frustrating. It's at the office. And so I will do the best I can off the top of my head. Um, I shared with you the couple pieces around apartments going, folks trying to build those. Um, I met with Ken Olberger about a couple of issues. One is sort of just reconciling and tracking all of the funds to close out the Old Woods Farm project and making sure that donations that were received are in the right accounts and so on. And so we're still working through that, but have a good grasp on it. The Conservation Commission is working on getting signs from Automaster that state that vehicles that are improperly parked will be towed. And so that will go up. They may be able to put a stand, before it'll be a few months before they can drive it into the ground, but they may be able to get a stand, that could be placed this winter. Ryan has a couple of projects that he is got all ready to go for the Port Clyde Public Landing. So sign for the Overlook Park, the what is the kiosk that will have information about the villages and the nearby attractions is all set and will go up again once things are a bit warmer. And so, and then yeah, lastly, the budget committee has one more session, at least, at least one more session, only one more scheduled right now. And then if we can get through the rest of it, it should be coming to the select board soon. And there's likely some stuff I'm forgetting, but those are sort of the main projects going on. We are still working on we need to find a better snow removal system for our sidewalks. We were trying Tim Hoppy's Bobcat machine, and after a couple storms, it's just not working out how we'd hoped. And so, for one, it's a little too big.
Struggling with it on the sidewalk.
Yeah, it's too big for our sidewalks for one, and you really need like a 36-inch plow, which is not very big at all. They make some machines that you sort of stand on and ride behind, and so we're looking into some stuff. And the other piece is that is a machine that gets pretty bogged down when it becomes slushy. So great for this storm, but if it's wetter or if it's stuff that gets plowed up onto the sidewalk, you'd really need, I think it's a single phase system to handle that, and the price is much higher. So anyway, still working on out some snow removal kinks, but trying to get sidewalks cleared for folks.
That's great. We do have a lot of people that like to walk in town.
Yes.
And sometimes it's forced if there's no parking in a village, right? So
Right. All right. Committee reports, the planning board.
The planning board, the last time they met, they discussed the upcoming changes, or at least reference the upcoming changes that need to be made because of the recent ADU legislation. So as referenced earlier, I know Michael Jordan's working on that. And the only application pending was from the tower facility, the water district property, where they are going to remove some antenna and replace them with a new one, but they really did not need to be before the planning board. So Terry Brackett can review the application. So that's it. We're meeting tomorrow night.
All right, the harbor committee.
They have not met.
All right. The budget committee, as we said, has met twice for workshops, and at the recent workshop, there is an issue that we'll be bringing to the select board for us to adopt a policy once they've formulated their recommendation to us. we all remember that when the voters authorized the select board to set the user fees for commercial fishermen in Port Clyde, that authority was delegated to us so that every time we wanted to change the fees or set the fees, the voters didn't have to do that. But we should make a decision about how the money that comes in should be treated. And rather than get into various options now before they've made a recommendation, I'll just let you know that we will be hearing more about that.
I did
Cemetery.
not, I did, I think you should follow up with Susie. I did not leave that conversation thinking that they were going
Going to
to
make a
give you,
recommendation.
I believe that they were going to give you a recommendation on a policy around our giving to community organizations.
Yes, they're going to make a recommendation about that. But I guess maybe they won't, and we just will need to make a decision. But you and I could talk about some of the options and then bring a recommendation to this group for a policy on the handling of the user fee income, right? Because I think we do need to clarify that. But we can talk about that and then see what's necessary. But yes,
Tammy has a
the
question.
So the
Tam-
user fees from the Port Clyde landing are not gonna be used to offset costs down at the landing?
yes, they are. That's always been understood that they were going to be um, used to pay for maintenance and costs. The question is how much of it could you spend on, say, like the harbor master's salary versus saving some of it for repairs in the future?
It's really
And
a tracking and restrictions question. If you want all of these fees to come in and go into a reserve account for that can never be pulled from, then that's one option. If or you can just look at the expenses of the facility and what was accrued in user fees and see if the fees are offsetting the expenses of having this new facility.
Right.
Right. And so
or
it's
we could have a third option that was something like, of the fees that we bring in every year, half of it we're going to put in a reserve account for the future, for future repairs, and half of it could be spent on, current operating expenses related to the harbors, the Port Clyde Harbor. So we have some options about that, and it this was our first year, and I think um, it just became clear to me, at least, that I feel like the select board should should clarify that, should discuss that and clarify that. But it makes sense for us to think that through and have Ryan and Brandon think it through and maybe get the input of I think we all know what the harbor committee would say, but maybe not, get their input and then adopt a policy. We have time for that. But yes, it is one way or another, it's going to be spent on the Port Clyde landing. It's just
How it's gonna be
short
done.
term, long term. Yeah. So the cemetery committee.
They will meet on Wednesday, February 4th at 4:30 at the town office, and they will be having their presentation on green burials.
Okay. The emergency services committee has not met since we met last. I'll just go down the TIF. The TIF committee is meeting on February 2nd, next week, to try to wrangle with this issue of the costs and benefits of having a TIF Conservation Commission.
No update on the Conservation Commission. They will be meeting next month at their regular time, which I don't remember right now, but it's on the calendar.
Yeah. Shellfish.
The Shellfish Committee met on January 20th in Warren, and the warden, Jeff Schroeder, continues to work with the court system in dealing with a clamor in Thomaston. And the Shellfish Committee chair discussed the budget, which we talked about, and I think it was approved for this year, but in the future, they are concerned about shortfalls related to the budget and what they want to do do they want to continue to raise permit fees, ask for more money from the towns, do fundraisers to help offset their budget, but as clammers leave or age out and new, younger people are not coming in, they have no interest in clamming, so the permit fees, they're not coming in like they used to. They're sort of slowly dwindling, and how much can you charge for permit before everybody just says we can't afford to do this anymore. So they are going to look at the budget cost, and they realize that permit sales are going down and the budget cost will continue to go up because you have expenses with the wardens and testing and court costs, educational costs, and conservation. And David Taylor asked me to mention about, somebody had asked about testing at Drift End. I guess because of the dog waste, there's the marshy spot across the road, but you really can't do anything about that. It's just decomposing natural waste, trees and leaves and things. But people have asked about the testing at the Drift End. And he said that he can do that if the town would like to have that done, but the town would have to cover the cost of doing that, because when he does do it, it costs about $300, and that's for the bottles and the test that has to be sent back to the state and the time. So he said that if we would like to do that, he will do it, but we would have to cover the cost.
Yeah, we do want that done. I believe Terry's already coordinating with
Okay.
him. Dick Nixon tested some water there and saw some sort of bacteria level that was, I don't have it in front of me, that was quite high. And so we just want to make sure that we do our own testing and figure it out and figure out whether or not this is, animal or human. Or just sort of the natural decomposition of, a bog. But I received some complaints a while back about the smell, and it is bad.
But my view is that's natural decomposition. That the on the other side of the culvert, what you see is that brown water are tannins decomposing, and they're stinky. They smell. I don't know. I just think people mistake like dog waste smells for things that are natural. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on waste.
Well, if we were willing to do 5 tests at Ripley Creek for smell that I think was, not as, on the same level as this one anyway. We should at least run one at Drift In if folks are bringing us a concern.
But they only test for like E. coli, right? They only test for waste products. They don't test for anything else, right?
I will share the results of the test that Dick Nixon had done with this group when I'm back in the office.
Send it to Sarah Oaktie also, because she knows a lot about this kind of stuff. And I would want to know too whether Herring Gut has tested there, because they're doing a lot of the citizen testing.
I have to email her tomorrow anyway, so I will. I'll talk to her about it.
Good.
Yeah, and on that topic, last week I attended a water quality webinar with people from around Maine, and the guy who did a really great presentation on this was on well water quality, has agreed to come to St. George this spring and do that same program for us. So that's good because we were already talking about doing something like that. And so he's got a presentation that's ready to go. One thing about the shellfish warden and the 5-town organization that we're a party to, how does our piece of that budget work, Brandon? Are we just billed X amount? Because we've seen it in the warrants before. There are
Yes, and I don't
amounts.
know off the top of my head what that amount's based on, whether it's valuation or population or what. So I will. Tara likely has the answer to that, so I will work on getting that.
And I guess I'm wondering too, is Jeff Schroeder, is his salary paid by the state or are the 5 towns sharing that? Do
I
you
think
know,
it's the
Tammy?
5 towns. And he agreed not to get any raises this year, so he agreed to continue with his current pay, and he has his truck and everything.
Yeah, it's worth having us understand how that works. Uh, well, thank you. Solid waste.
Okay, they met. I didn't write down when they met, but they met. They did. Ben is still picking up the compost at the school to keep the compost program help with that. The chair, Bruce Fagley, and the committee put together a plan to expand the compost program. And bins are being purchased that will go to businesses, to the businesses that sign on to the new expanded program. And they will pick them up as needed and a clean bin will be left. They mentioned that they were gonna go and pick up compost every day, but I think they're gonna look to see if it needs to be done daily or every other day or weekly. And Bruce hopes to start with the Black Harpoon if they are agreeable and then expand the program in the spring if it works for the Black Harpoon.
A meeting that I went to, they said they probably would have to pick up daily in the summer, but they probably could get by, the decomposition and
Oh,
concerns.
yeah, the smell and everything. Yes.
Yeah, they wouldn't have to do it as often in other seasons, maybe.
But they sounds like it's gonna work out pretty good.
Good. Parks and Rec. Oh,
Right.
poor Brian.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, yeah,
We
I
can
switched
hear
I switched to my phone, so
you. Okay.
they did meet on the 13th. They talked a little bit about some stuff. It was mostly Muscle Ridge because that's the big thing coming up, but I think she said they had 7 come to the senior social this month, which she said went great. They played games and hung out for an hour or two, and the next luncheon is, I don't have the date written down, but I would guess it's the second Tuesday of the month because that's the meeting. Is Valentine's themed. They're going to play bingo, and Bill's helping organize that, I guess. They talked a little bit about their committee goals, which right now they're trying to focus on interacting with the school and collaborating with the school on more programs for the older kids. And just right now they only go up to 6th grade with the rec stuff. So they want to try to get some information to the older kids, at least with local programs and stuff like that they could use. The basketball clinic started for the younger kids in January, so they have a 1st and 2nd grade clinic going now that had pretty good numbers. I think it was 15 to 20 kids showed up to the first one, and I don't know since, but I know both my sons stayed and helped with it. So they had a few 8th grade boys and then one 4th grade boy help, I guess. So, and then the ski club started on the 15th. She didn't have the fee prices yet at the meeting, so I don't have those, but that's up and running. You can sign up online or at the town office, I think. And the rest of it's Muscle Ridge planning. You know, they're really getting geared up for the tournament. They've started up with their ad programming today and starting to sell. They're selling banners this year instead of ads in the program. So if there's any local businesses that want to advertise, they can put up a banner in the gym during the full 3 days. They'll be advertised inside the building, and that's pretty much it. Really, they're focused on Muscle Ridge. So
What are the dates of that?
it's March 6th, 7th, and 8th. So it'll be Friday night, all day Saturday, and then Sunday games are like I think 12:30 and 12:30 and 2 or something. The championship games are on Sunday after lunch. So if anybody wants to help, they need a lot of concessions, food, and volunteers. So but it's gonna be a good time.
Good. Resilience Committee.
The Resilience Committee continues to meet quite often. There's a meeting tomorrow, and there's all kinds of subcommittees meeting. Tomorrow is the Vulnerability Assessment Action Group, and we're looking at infrastructure and pinch points and all the things that I've talked about before. And then on, well, if it's February 4th, there's a joint meeting of all the subcommittees on the action plan. And in March, there's a meeting of the whole, both sides of the resilience. All the subcommittees are going to get together and update. So yes, everything's moving quite quickly on the grant for the climate action plan, which is now called, I don't know, I forget. It's now called the action plan. So yeah.
Well, one thing I didn't mention about the Colby conversation was that Nick said, you know, some of us might remember that Dan Tishman was co-chair of climate resilience task force or something that Janet Mills
Right.
established.
Right.
And they issued a report last summer, whenever it was. Nick did say that that report was forming some of the work from that report or recommendations from that report were going to be part of the mission of this program. So, and that's obviously, you know, resilience and infrastructure related. And so as soon as they have a director, I want to make sure that person talks to Susie or Zooms in on one of your meetings, knows, you know, we've already sent them the Sebago report and the comprehensive plan and the working waterfront vulnerability report that MCOC did for St. George. But clearly it's important for them to be involved in this if that's part of their mission.
Okay.
Maybe not on their first day on the job, but at some point we could invite this new director to meet with us. It would be interesting.
Yes, definitely. That's kind of, you know, that was the reason I suggested this meeting with Nick is that I just really want to make sure that they engage with the town and they know how much is going on here already and that we're partners with them as opposed to not knowing what each other are doing. Open Space Committee.
Okay, well, they're going strong. They met on the 14th, and yes, January 14th, and right after us, and they talked about their visioning for their mission basically, and defining open space. So they're still getting organized, and some of the other issues they talked about were tree growth and other tax breaks that landowners can get, maps and the need for maps and what else other things they might need, lists of things, of resources, and public involvement and how to engage with the public and let them know what's going on with their committee. They were thinking, town website or Facebook page, and they'll be bringing their thoughts on the mission of the committee to their next meeting, which is in 2 days on the 14th at 4 p.m. on Wednesday at the town office downstairs, I think. So it's looking good.
Well, I did sort of looping back to the getting input from as many people in town as possible about parking and the Bowie park. Because we have connections like with the CDC, you serving on the housing group, and Wendy, and I don't know if anybody else in this group regularly attends the Business Alliance meetings, but it did seem to me like with Colby coming to town, whatever's going to happen at Wildcat with Maine Coast Fishermen's Association, um, it might be beneficial to have some periodic meetings about economic development in St. George with, whoever is interested in participating. And I know that that is one of the impact priorities of the CDC. And obviously, they're doing a whole lot with training workforce at the Makerspace CTE program. But I did send an email to Ryan Lashane and Mike Felton and Rob Kelly about seeing if there was some vehicle for having periodic discussions about economic development and anything that the town could be doing, whether it's this parking or something else, to support economic development. So, sort of like Brandon said, the in the comprehensive plan, um, the community said housing is a priority. The working waterfront economy is important to our town. More recreational opportunities for older folks, open space, all these things. And we do have mechanisms we're putting in place to attend to all of those. But I thought it might be useful to have even a few times a year where uh, economic development as a topic was discussed. So we'll see what people want to do about that because it isn't really, we don't have an economic development staff person like bigger cities like Rockland and Belfast, but we could at least be at a meeting every now and then and hear from uh, people who want to drive more jobs and more money in town. So
that might tie into what Colby and Northlight Foundation.
yes, right. And I feel like the time of this for this is right because Colby is going to have this presence and it will make sure that we know what other people are doing. Because I don't go to the Business Alliance meetings, I don't know the things that they're doing other than what I see when they have, the visitors guide and uh, Yuletide and art tours and things like that. Um, and obviously the CDC. But if we had a mechanism for sharing that information, then Colby would hear from all of us and we'd hear from each other. So,
I'm a member. I don't have a business, but they let me in anyway.
right. I'm sure they're willing to have dues from anybody, right?
Their meetings are really interesting. I've been to a couple of them. But I did want to mention one small thing about parking, and that's I would love to see more parking. But in the meantime, I'm wondering, Brandon, if we could put up like a blue and white sign that says public parking with an arrow pointing off of Main Street to our town office lot, because most days there's room for some people to park there.
Yeah, I think we could do that until, assuming that we
If it
don't.
works. I mean, if you
Yeah,
really can't have no place to park your truck, then you can take it down.
right.
Right, because I don't think that the general public would think that just anybody could park there.
Yeah.
So if we do feel like that,
You mean
well,
general public that are not from St. George? Is that what you mean?
well, I mean,
I think
let's say somebody was gonna come to an event. I won't use St. George days because the parking lot is otherwise occupied that day. But if people wanted to come to something, I don't think the average person would think that it is okay just to park there and wander around. So if that is our position, at least for now, I think it would be useful to say municipal parking and an arrow or something.
Great. That was just a small suggestion.
All right. Well, we do have a member of the public who's here now. Any public comment from you, Janine? No, maybe just listening. So follow-up items. Water testing at the Drift-In Beach is a follow-up item. I do think we need to follow up on policy ways in which we can support housing, and Michael obviously is already on top of the subdivision and land use. Well, I don't know about the subdivision ordinance. Wendy, has he talked about that?
I believe we lost Wendy.
Yeah, I think Wendy
Okay.
left.
All right. Well, so I will touch base with Michael about the subdivision ordinance.
I think
But-
that there's something that has to be updated in this, based on the legislature, but
Okay,
I think specifically number of ADUs that can be allowed in a growth area. I think that allows for now. Maybe Erin can chime in if she knows. But if our subdivision ordinance says that would be considered the subdivision, I think we would at the very least, need a comment in there saying that, except in growth areas.
okay. Well, we're gonna need to set up one of those little working groups to meet to talk about subdivision ordinance changes. And Michael's on top of the other ones, but and come to all these events. The dance, the fisherman's panel, Muscle Ridge, and we'll see you there. All right, a motion to adjourn. Tammy?
I just wanted to ask if Knox County has been able to get themselves back up to speed yet with it doing any business or anything going on yet?
There's legislation proposed,
Right.
but it hasn't been voted on. And it's like a Band-Aid fix. It's a very temporary fix, but I think it's just in the proposed phase. I don't know when they're expecting that to get voted on, and so not yet is the answer.
I thought it was getting fixed, actually. I think that I think it has been, but
Oh, you
I
do?
received an email from the county saying, what's the last date in which you would need to know our budget?
Right.
Yeah, but that could be just they want to know that without.
I heard at the Midcoast managers meeting. I don't know. I'll if I find out, I will follow up
Well,
with you.
let us know.
Or Tammy, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Jane votes yes.
Brian, yes.
I think I'll vote yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, that's 4 of us, Aaron, for the minutes. All right, well, this was a first for us. meeting solely by Zoom. It seemed to go okay. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
See
Have
you
a
in
good
2
night.
weeks.